All I think about these days, all I think about these days is getting at that goal that's in my heart. I need a reason to believe, yeah, maybe a cure for my disease.
That song is by Blaine Long. My name is Matthew Blades. Meet my friends.
Hi, it's Tim.
And Beth from the Mulhausen Group Real Estate.
We are so proud to sponsor another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. You can catch us at tmgphoenix.com.
That's a good group of people right there. Hi, it's Matthew Blades, host of Learn from People Who Lived It. And a reminder before we get into today's show that each of these episodes is presented uninterrupted with the support of the Mulhausen Group, with the support of ASI or Advanced Systems Integrations. They design and install cutting-edge audio and visual equipment. So if you're on the IT staff or you're the IT director, please reach out to ASI. This audio-visual integrator has offices in Minnesota and in Scottsdale and 2 decades of experience. And the cool thing about them, they pay real close attention to that last 5%, which is the one that drives you and I crazy. We've got a link to ASI in our show description, or you can go there yourself by visiting asi-av.com.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about one of only 3 things that I actually know anything about.
That's awesome. Lori and I met a few weeks ago. I was speaking at the Sun Health Wellness Resiliency event that they put on, and afterwards you and I were introduced, and it was like a clear connection there. And then when I found out you have all these mad skills in meditation and in writing, Lori's one of the few people that is going to be a part of this new effort we're going to roll out. Maybe late summer it'll start going on, but the idea is that we're going to bring in first responders and veterans, and we're going to work them through a sequence of non-traditional therapies, stuff they maybe haven't tried before. And so it'll be for vets and first responders who feel stuck, who maybe, had some real traumatic experience and they're looking to shift through it or something like that. And we're going to do writing. We're going to do equine therapy. We're going to have meditation and yoga, and it's going to like cold therapy, and it's really going to be powerful and life-giving for these folks. And so that's a little bit of a setup, and Lori's going to be one of those people on the team.
Once I catch on to something that I love, it's like, I think I've said this to you before, I just want to cannonball right in. Like, I don't have the ability to sort of be trepidatious, but I'm learning it.
Well, speaking of learning, while I was in my retreat last summer, I learned that when it comes to the things that we decide, to keep inside, there's really 2 ways to get them out. And it's pretty important that they come out. You can either talk about it or you can write about it, but they must come out into the consciousness to get dealt with. Would you mind giving me your take on that, what I just said?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because some of the research that I combed through talked about that specifically. Do we have these benefits from talking, from writing, or from both? So we'll probably get into that.
Yeah, it was in my retreat that I learned, Lori, that we have to, I always keep my notes from my retreat very close by, which, by the way, is one of my tips that I recommend to everybody, is whatever the flip changed your life, keep that on standby. And keep it close so you can refer to it all the time. But I'd written this down at some point in here where I said something like, you either have to write it or talk it, but it has to get out into the state of consciousness. Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, totally. And, I'm a person who just loves reading research, right? So I'm not a researcher, but this interesting paradigm, which goes back to like the 90s when they started studying this thing called disclosure theory and this inhibition theory, which was basically like, if you've got stuff inside, it's basically what you just said, except it said it in a lot more words, right? But if you've got stuff inside and you're not letting it out, your natural state is to let it out, right? The natural flow is for that to flow up and through you. And so it actually causes our body and our brain more work to keep it in or to inhibit it, which causes lifetime low-level stress. And so the idea is talk it out or write it out. There are some different benefits for writing versus talking, but these initial studies actually showed that, people who talked, even with a therapist, had pretty similar results as somebody who just sat and wrote by themselves and didn't share. There's some indication that writing, this process of writing, does a few different things to our brain, especially when we use our actual hand to write. But it is what you said. When you keep that stuff in, it causes that low level stress, which causes problems with your central nervous system for life, right? That low level stress adds up. It's what causes everything we don't want to be happening in our bodies.
Yeah, I love that we're starting to use the right words for all this stuff too, because that's what it feels like for most people. It does kind of feel like you're keyed up here in your nervous system, and it is challenging to sort of to settle it down. And that, again, is where writing or talking comes into play, because you have to get these things out. They don't belong inside of you. By law, they have to move through you. They just do. They have to pass through you, or you've heard people talk about this, you get stuck. I mean, that's really what it means when you get stuck. It's in there and it stays, and you got to get it out. So let's talk about some of this stuff you know a lot about, which is free writing for worry. Maybe we just start with those first two. Like free writing, what even is that?
Okay, free writing, and some people call this different things. Some people call it stream of consciousness writing. Some people even make the leap to call it mindful writing, but it's a little bit different. I mean, basically what it is you sit down or whatever, you write with no pauses, no stopping. So it is truly what you just described about, getting stuck. If our body was like an electrical system and our emotions were currents, right, coming out, it's just letting those currents come out. You don't care about spelling. You don't care if you can even read it. You're not looking at punctuation. You're not trying to draft an essay. It's just engaging more of that right brain and letting the stuff come out, and kind of keeping the left brain that does what it needs to do, which is wants to operationalize everything, right? Categorize everything. It's saying, stand down. And it's just this matter of letting everything flow out. And
we used to do this a lot in radio training. We would do stream of conscious conversation. And so let me put it to you like I know it. You can tell me if this is kind of how it works in the writing aspect. But, we would sit down in front of microphones, and literally you would have to be like, you'd start and they would say, go. And if you didn't have anything, you just kind of said, okay, I'm sitting here in front of this microphone and I have no idea what I want to say. I don't know what my thoughts are. I don't know where I want to go. Look at that tree over there. I see a tree. Now there's a bird that just came in. I mean, that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
It's exactly it. In fact, that's what I tell. I'm working with a client now who's total type A. I mean, she's been a leader in the corporate world for a long time. And I'm working with her with free writing. And she's like, well, I can already tell you, I'm going to overthink it and I'm not going to know what to write. And I'm going to sit there and stare at the piece of paper. My brain's going to go nuts. And I said, if you have to write, the first time you try it, if you have to write, I don't know what to write, like a demerit, do it. If you have to write, I hate this, over and over, do it. Eventually, you'd be surprised. You do that for 60 seconds and some other stuff just starts coming out.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
And like I said a few minutes ago, it has to pass through you. It's okay. Like, this is where I used to get tripped up a lot, where I wouldn't let myself feel it. I wouldn't let myself go through the emotion. I would fight it all the time. I'd sit there and say, why can't you think of something amazing? Why can't you go do something great right now? And what I really needed to acknowledge was, gosh, I don't feel creative at the moment. Why don't I feel creative right now? What's going on there, right? And then you get to the root of it and you can start to shift through it. So I dig what you're saying in this creative space, and it's great for especially when you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to bed and you can't really even figure out what's going on in your brain. You just know it's busy. It's like light a little candle here in a chair and start doing some free writing. See what comes out. Is it your experience, Lori, that people find out truths about themselves through that free writing experience?
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Small or large. I mean, it comes with practice, and it's really not the practice of free writing. It's the practice of abstaining from judging ourselves, which we're trained to do from the moment, we can interact with society. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it definitely, yeah.
We're open for comments and questions if anybody has any. We get a lot of people popping in and out as it is a Monday afternoon. So let's talk a little bit about free writing for trauma and how that might be helpful for some.
So there's really good research coming out now on free writing for trauma. So, and the one thing I want to say, not only with trauma, but also with what would be called on the more difficult spectrum of emotion. So if you're having something that's more than a mild depression, or if you have serious trauma, it might be a good idea to work with somebody. If you're already working with a coach, if you're working with a therapist, to integrate. So, but what the research shows is that there's this ability for people to work through traumas that they haven't previously. And it has to do with this inability to get it up and out, because everybody who has trauma knows it's there, right? It haunts you. And so it's this ability of you really can't look at it and address it until it does come out. And so this process of writing through trauma is more focused than free writing. Free writing is a great way to start if you're going to write your way through trauma, because you're probably not going to sit down and feel comfortable just writing about what you feel. But when we write for trauma, it truly is writing about the experience that has been traumatizing for you. So you are unearthing that in the moment. And what the research shows is that in the moment, it can be difficult. But if you complete your writing over the course of the next 2 and 3 weeks, these feelings begin to dissipate. And it is because you're not inhibiting that anymore. And you can look at it in different ways. You might feel that your trauma is unrelated to your regular life in certain ways, right? Like it's not affecting my relationship or it's not affecting my work. But as things come out through this process of more expressive writing particularly about your emotions, these increased benefits from writing begin to come in, where you have these long-term, more emotionally stable moments.
Yeah, I'm almost finished writing my book, Learn from People Who Lived It, and sent the first draft to my editor yesterday, which is wild. And I'm only bringing this up because in there, I transcribe episode 9 of series 1 from the podcast, which is my experience at my retreat. And one of the exercises that I had to go through with regard to my trauma was an inner child exercise where she challenged me to go home that night and write it out. But of course, I hate writing. So I went home that night and I recorded it out, right? And I just talked through it and I put that on tape. And that is in large part what that episode is all about, is that exercise of vulnerability. So if you want to see what it's like for somebody who likes to talk it out, you can go listen to that episode. If you want to see what it's about to write it out, keep listening. So how would somebody start, Lori? Like, say somebody's like, God, I'm jacked. I got some things. They weigh me down. I know I have stuff. How do I get it out? What's my first step?
If you're really in your head about writing in general, like you were, I would start with, first of all, timing yourself. If you can do 15 minutes once a week, that's effective. If you can do it for 4 weeks, even better. Time yourself. If you can only do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. And I usually recommend for the first 2 times, don't even look back at your writing unless you feel, this like intuitive call to look back, because that's what we all do. We let ourselves write it out. And then we look back on it like we're looking at our, 14-year-old self journal, and we're
Right.
like, oh my God, I'm appalled at what I wrote and I'm embarrassed of myself. And so sometimes it's easier to just scrap it. Anything important, this is coming out of your consciousness, right? Anything important is still in there and it'll come back when you need it to.
Let's talk really quick about, I have to pause you because this is such an important piece of the puzzle. When the stuff comes out that feels a little gross, feels a little disgusting, feels a little guilty, shameful, all that stuff that is completely bogus, by the way, and you'll hopefully come to learn that. one day. But when it's coming out and you feel that sense of like, oh God, I shouldn't be thinking those thoughts. I shouldn't be writing those thoughts. What's your advice on how to manage that?
I mean, that's difficult because that's why I recommend throwing it away for the first few times. So you literally can't let yourself do that. But that process of abstaining from judgment of ourselves just comes with practice. I mean, for me, I use this more mindful based approach, which is the idea is to look at what you've written and go, okay, that exists. And now I'm letting that move aside. So oftentimes when we're in that resistance mode, which is what you're describing, right? We're having this great degree of resistance. It's because we're just not going that one tiny step to accepting what we've written and then just letting it leave, right? We're sort of still in that mode of like, I can't believe I did this. But don't look at it. I mean, let me tell you, I free write. I always have. I do it in my phone a lot. I'll probably, be arrested if somebody ever finds my phone and sees the, crazy things that I've written in there. That's the way our brains work. And the thing to remember is what happened, the way that you are reacting to your trauma is not a result of you being broken or wrong. It's a result of things that happened to you that took you out of your optimal state of being joyful and happy and content with yourself.
Right. And just acknowledging that those thoughts are just thoughts. They're not who you are. And, I worked with a lot of therapists along the way, a lot of psychiatrists, talked it out, did the spiritual thing. And I'll tell you, I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. It has to get through you. It has to come through you. And so, honestly, if you're sitting there and you're having thoughts and they're weird and dark and gross, and I'll be vulnerable right now. I'm a meditation practitioner. And here's an interesting thing about my meditations. You might even be able to talk a little bit about this, Lori. But sometimes I'm in my meditations and I will have these really wild kind of dark thoughts. People die, horrific deaths. You know what I mean? Like the kind of stuff you see in horror movies and stuff like that. And I don't know what it is, but it's fairly frequently my meditations, this scene will come in and then it just goes. And I used to kind of fight it, and it would almost mess up my entire meditation because I'd be like, "What are you thinking about that for? Like, what is that, dude? What are you crazy? What do you got something wrong with you, man?" And then I ended up meeting with the therapist one time, and she was like, "Yeah, totally normal, totally normal, totally normal. Yep, everybody has the thought. Goes, it comes, it leaves. The difference is." The healthy people, they don't think about it again. They just let it pass through and they don't sit on it. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. And even that sort of brings us into this next space of like writing for worry, because there are a lot of, techniques used by therapists and that we can now apply to writing, which is this idea of you give yourself a specified time of day to do your worrying. And a specified time in which to do it. And that's your chance to get all that stuff out, right? And then you go on with the rest of your day. It works emotionally, but in our brain, it also, not only do you feel better in that moment because you've gotten it all out, it actually clears out your brain. Right. So that your brain is focused so much on the worry that it can't do regular stuff. Now you're more productive, you're sleeping better, like you're just in this, you're getting back to this homeostasis.
Yeah. And because you have to get to a stage again where you recognize that I know you love to think you're a multitasker, but our brain can really only do the one thing at a time. And so if you're holding on to a full glass of water while you're trying to cook dinner, that's going to be tough. You're going to need to eventually set that glass of water down so you could just tend to the business at hand. So I like what you're saying about designating a time for worry. And that could be it is one of the very cool benefits of writing and saying, okay, today at 2:00, that's my worry. That's my 20 minutes of worry. Everything, because then that gives you the ability to be, if it's 7 a.m. and you're worrying about something, you say, no, it's not time to worry yet. 2:00 is when we do the worrying, and you just let it go. And then if chances are it might not even show up again at 2:00, but if it does, you're able to kind of write it out then, let it pass through. And, what do they say about worries? How many of them come true? Like 10%?
Exactly. And you're right. Oftentimes, I mean, I used to have anxiety, and thank goodness, like I've basically taken care of it through meditation and these mindful practices. But I mean, there were so many things that felt like the end of the world in that moment. And if I just waited a few hours, I didn't even care about them.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the truth. All right. What else is on our awesome list of writing? We had free writing for trauma, for patterns, free writing and patterns. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is really cool. And these are sort of staged, right? So if you just start plain old free writing, then you might try free writing through a difficult experience or trauma. And one of the things you can do with or without trauma, or just if you want to get to know yourself better, which is also another great benefit of free writing and this stream of consciousness writing. When you look for, there are, in this research, there are particular types of words, and there's 3 or 4 categories of words that you can actually track. How many times did I say this kind of word? How many times did I say this kind of word, right? And as you start to look at the frequency of some, the infrequency of others, not only does it make you feel more empowered, as if you're not just writing it out, right? Now this is a tool. Now you can take it a step further, and you can see black and white proof of your progress, which is the other thing I love about looking for patterns, because you can look at week 1 and you can look at week 4 and go, wow, like my writing, based on these patterns that these psychologists have sort of developed, and they tell us that they're good indicators of how we're feeling. Mm-hmm. I can actually look at my work and go, wow, this actually worked, and here's proof. It becomes less esoteric and less like, artsy and creative, and it becomes this tangible thing that you use on your own to get yourself to a better place.
It's data driven. That's what you like about it. Yeah, it's kind of it's like for folks who want a little data, it's like, here you go. Here it is in writing. I love it. Yep. Sharing the process, sharing the write. This is one of those things. I remember at my retreat, they talked a lot about burning it and putting it in something they called the violet fire, and just, letting it drift off into where it's going next. Where do you stand on that? There's some people who write such beautiful words that if they didn't share them, we'd be so upset. I think of like Maya Angelou, right? Like these incredible poets, these people who have very meaningful things to say. So where is that line of, do I share?
I mean, it's personal, number one. I mean, it's sort of 2-pronged, but it's also personal. For me, and what I normally recommend with people who are new to writing, especially free writing, is, like I said in the beginning, just get rid of it, don't look at it. But as you progress in your writing, you're going to identify certain things, not just data patterns, as we talked about, but certain emotional patterns and certain triggers that are going to come up. And there are those ones that stick, right? You're like, man, I'm trying to get rid of this issue. I keep getting triggered. I've tried everything. I love burning. Like, I love an intentional kind of burning for that. Okay, I did all my writing. These 2 things are relentless. I'm actually going to actively sort of create my own type of ritual and burn them. Okay. And as far as sharing, there's value not only in sharing the write, but there's real value in sharing the process, especially with other people who are writing, because as I now know, as I've gotten older and, wiser, there is nothing new. We are all this collective body, and we're all sharing very similar experiences, right? And so when you think you're the only one, and then you sit in a room with 10 other people who might be writing with you, and you can begin not even sharing what you wrote, because that's very personal for some people. So we'll go there. But when you just talk about what the experience was like, that's another thing that breaks through the barrier, right? It's going to make it easier to write next time because you got it out.
Right.
But you're also now informing other people. You're almost creating together these best practices for being better, happier people. And you find that sense of belonging, that, okay, somebody here knows what I'm going through. They feel it too. They don't think I'm crazy, or maybe all 10 of us are crazy or whatever it is. But there's just real value in talking about how it was for you. And there's a lot you can learn about how it was for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe we haven't got to this question earlier, but this doesn't have just trauma implications or applications is the better word. This doesn't just have these trauma applications. Like for me, this applies with anybody who's struggling with anything in their life right now, be it a decision to leave a job or to stay in a marriage or to, have kids, or they're frustrated because they're trying to get pregnant. They can't, right? Like all of the things that we cycle through in life, it's clear to me after spending, 25 minutes with you that there's a place for writing in all of that.
It's true. I mean, for me, I've used writing. I mean, before I became interested in, research and what it technically does, I knew it worked for me. It was my only friend sometimes. So when I needed a friend to talk to, and especially when I was younger and a very strange kid and who grew into a very strange adolescent and a very strange adult, there weren't very many people who I could relate to. So I felt always as though I were speaking another language. And when I would write, it was almost like I had a friend there who could understand and somehow give me feedback. So even now, I mean, the other day I woke up feeling a little bit discombobulated, partly because I was sick, and I was like, it's a very busy time for me right now. I've got to be, productive. I don't stress myself out anymore, and I was like, I just am not clear on like what I really need to get done today. Yeah. And I just sat down and I did a free write, and I was like, oh, okay, that all makes sense.
Interesting. Is there anything that came up that's worth sharing that might be beneficial in order to either help people understand more about what comes out, or is it just such a different thing for everybody?
I mean, it is different, but I'm glad to share. I mean, part of what came out as I looked at what I was writing about was what I thought I needed to do. And I realized a couple of things. One was that a lot of what I thought I needed to do was tied to other people thinking I needed to do it, or it was tied to what other people would think if I shifted that priority. So for me, it helped me realize, okay, none of that matters. You're living your life. And that's an old pattern for me, right? So you're living your life. So I could prioritize by going, all right, now ask yourself if this person whose frowny face you see in the corner of your mind when you say you didn't get this done, if this person doesn't exist, does this urgently need to be done? And it was like, no, that's how I crossed things off my list. It was like, what do I know I need to do? Not what other people.
That's really cool. That's really interesting. Yeah, because I know I struggle with some of that too. I think, that dangerous thing of comparing your page 1 to somebody else's page 200 in terms of, you'll get there. You'll get that done. Don't worry about it. This is, like you just said, this is your race right now. That's really cool that you may have actually got me interested in doing a little writing here in the last 29 minutes. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm writing my book right now, and so it's not that I am completely opposed to it. It's just that for me, the stream of consciousness and word has always been easier. It's always been easier for me to articulate my thoughts and to communicate my feelings with words. And I totally recognize that I'm an anomaly there. I totally recognize that most folks would rather write it out. They'd rather be in private with their own thoughts and feelings, and because that's the way it comes out easier for them to understand. So as we wind down, if somebody's like me and kind of gotten interested in this whole thing, what's a neat little starting point? Do you have like a little Lori 101 that you offer people?
I mean, I do. So I have a writing group, and they'll be small. That's starting June 1st. You can find that either on my website or Instagram. But
what's the website? And I'll put it in the comments right now.
Oh, it's Get Your Flow Right, not right. WRIGHT, getyourflowright.com. And you can reach out to me. My email's on there too, phone number. But the writing group starts June 1st. And then through Instagram, I just started today a little writing game to get people like you who might be interested, but don't necessarily think they want to write or don't have time. I post a prompt every Monday, right? Today was home. And the task for people is to write for 60 seconds. That's it. Free write for 60 seconds. And if they want to share it, we're going to create this kind of digital anthology about who we really are, because that's my goal with helping people write, is to help them come back home to themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Get YOURFLOW and then WRITE, correct?
No, RIGHT.
Oh yeah. All right.
I know.
Okay, getyourflowright.com. Cool. I'm going to put this in the comments right now in case anybody wants to check you out, which I strongly recommend they do. Very cool. All right, what are we forgetting about as we wind down here? Is there I'm going to look at this list one more time here. Creating the art from the right. It's about the only thing we haven't hit yet.
Yeah, and I should preface this by saying nobody needs to be an artist or a writer or a poet to benefit from this. And so, we've been wronged when it comes to art and what art is and what creation is. Everything you do in your life, every action you take creates something. So these classes are progressive. So after the first 4 easy weeks, we go into, 6 weeks. And then after the 6 weeks, if you still want to stick with it, we actually start creating poetry from our art, or from our free writes. And, this is, for me, in this esoteric way, art carries the essence of who we are. Our soul and our spirit are right there in it, and it's living and breathing. And when we can create that from the deepest place, the most authentic place, and then when people experience that writing or that art, we're automatically connected with them in a way that we just can't do in regular life.
Yeah. I'll put it to you like this. Musicians have songs that they've created you will never hear. I've created content the world will never hear. Many people have written words we will never see. And that's because that's the benefit of it, is that, like I said earlier, and maybe 5 or 6 times now, it has to pass through you. They have to get through you. The thoughts have to get through you, because if they stay, you're stuck. And if you're stuck, well, then we all kind of know what happens there. Okay, so I hope they'll look you up and get started in some of this writing that you do. I could see a really cool thing happening. And you know who else? Who I need to talk to you about, Lori, is Austin. Austin's going to be on the Learn from People Who Lived It podcast next Monday. He is a 23-year-old amazing human who has a couple limitations. Got Tourette's and he's got severe OCD. But when he writes and he does poetry, specifically slam poetry, it goes away. And his words are insanely cool. So I have to connect the two of you guys, because I think you'd love his energy, number one. But he's a really great guy. So anyways.
Yeah, I'd love to. Now that, the world's open again, I'm looking forward to getting back to some poetry readings, and I would love to hear him, spit his piece.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No doubt. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with me. And this is not the one and done. I'm going to bring you back time and time again, because there's always a time for somebody to hear this message, quite frankly. And every day is different for people, and someday might not be the day they connected with this video, and a month from now they may, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's how it works. All right, cool. So aside from the writing, what other services do you help for and provide for people? Because I know you're very generous and kind with what you do. So I'll give you a minute to explain the other things that you offer folks.
Oh, thanks. And by the way, if you have a nonprofit and you're interested in a writing group, I do that for free. Not a ton at a time, but I love doing that. In fact, I'm talking to you, Mom, coming up here pretty soon. And I also am developing, I do guided meditations. I'm developing some groups designed for beginner meditators who think they can't do it. And then I do my, woo-woo esoteric stuff, which is really this sort of idea of our bodies being electric and having certain frequencies that they run best on. And these are based on old, 3,000-year-old ancient teachings to help us find what we call resonance, which is this wholeness in ourselves.
All right. So I got it. We're going to get you back next time to talk meditation. And then we're going to bring you back the next time to talk woo-woo.
Yes. Okay. Love it.
Do you? I do too. I'm excited about that. Meditation and woo-woo. How do you spell that?
I mean, I spell it woo-woo, but
awesome.
I would say use, take creative license.
Yeah. All right, cool. Meditation and woo-woo. We'll get you back another time. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, it was. You can stick around till the end or you can bail out. It's your call. It's 1:36. I don't know what you got going on.
Well, I want to stick around. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, I was just going to let everybody know really quick. I've got the new Mental Joe hoodie on today. And I think a lot of folks know that I'm doing some work with Chad from Mental Joe. As a matter of fact, every single Wednesday, we're right here doing that thing right there. And it's me, it's Dr. Dave and Mental Joe putting on a broadcast for veterans where we're just trying to speak to their mental wellness. And the reason I bring up the Mental Joe apparel is because for anybody that goes out and supports buying a hat, shirt, they got all kinds of new apparel that they just put out, this American apparel. He's clear about that. The proceeds are going to benefit non-traditional therapies. And I think I mentioned up front that Lori is going to be a piece of that equation once we get there here at the end of the summer, where we're going to put on these 3-week, what would you call them, Lori? Would you call them seminars? Would you call them workshops? What do you think you would call them?
I don't know. I don't really care for both those words. I would call them meetups, honestly. Like,
releases or
release. Oh, I love that. Yeah,
right. That's probably a better word because that's what's going to happen. But yeah, we're going to offer. That's what we should probably call. That's actually a good name for it. A 3-week release camp.
Ooh.
Doesn't that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
I want to release.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to sound a little.
Look, we're going to the bathroom. All right. Well, listen, the 3-week release camp will take place at some point. And again, your support of hoodies and hats with the Mental Joe apparel directly, like there's a straight line that draws to all of that getting started and getting off the ground. And so I just wanted to mention that. And then finally, we have, I don't know if you saw it up front, but we have a brand new episode which came out today with Melinda. But I wanted to end today with a clip from last week's podcast. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, Lori. I know you've been feeling a little under the weather, but did you have a chance to catch up with Brandy's episode?
No.
So this woman is just unbelievable. And I'll give you the short of it, okay? She's a teenager. She finds out she's pregnant. Everybody in her life says she should abort this child. She goes to the clinic. She's literally on the table praying that it won't work. And then carries that amazing, awful feeling with her for years. Gets into a car accident, goes through infertility. Like her life just gets put in the washing machine, shooken up and shaken out. And now she's on the other side. And for the first time, she came on our podcast and she told her story, like the whole thing. And after we were done, I had a chance to ask her how she felt. Listen to this. What's been the lesson for you in all of this?
That life is worth living. I wish I wouldn't have let it control me for 18 years. I still was living, but I was not my true self. I am my absolute true self in life right now.
Yeah. And a good husband and 2 great kids and a great career. And finally you have the life that maybe you dreamed about as a little girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you, Brandy.
Thank you so much. Me too.
Yeah. How are you feeling after this?
I want to get off the phone and scream at the top of my lungs. That's what I want to do, because it's been too long. Like I said, I told you I would love to be a motivational speaker. I would love to just share my story, and I feel like this is a great first step in my next step in life and journey.
She is the bomb. She's so great, and I encourage everybody to go check out that episode. Don't forget to check out the comments. We've got a link to her website in there, and she can get you started with the writing, with the meditation, or the woo-woo. You pick. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody. Thanks again, Lori.
Thank you.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.